Welcome everyone to this Cloud Management as a Service webinar. As Nate mentioned, we're going to go through the EchoStore Cloud Management as a Service product today. But first, I just wanted to give a quick intro. For those who don't know EchoStore, EchoStore has been helping customers in the data center for about 17 years now, and we really focus on customer experience and excellence. And we've been helping our customers, like I said, for a long time. In the past 18 months or so, we've been working with our customers and finding that the transition to cloud is a lot more complex for many of our customers than originally advertised. So I'm going to quickly touch on today a couple of the other services that we provide within our cloud and MSP solutions platform. So firstly, we have a team of architects and implementation engineers here to help with strategic planning, cloud engineering when it comes to developing landing zones for customers, looking at their applications, doing migrations and modernization of those applications, and then finally, optimize and operate in the cloud, which is, a different type of operations, a different type of financial model, so we can help with those cloud economics conversations, as well as, application modernization and migration efforts. So that's the first pillar of our group. The second pillar here is one of the other pieces of feedback we had from our customers was, we have these contracts with Microsoft or AWS. Maybe we have multiple accounts in AWS, subscriptions in Azure, or even Microsoft 365 licensing. So we, as your partner, can help you navigate that landscape, as well as work with the hyperscalers to really get the most out of what you're doing in the cloud and utilizing your cloud subscriptions to the best of their ability. So we continue to work with customers to go down those different roads, especially as they pertain to how you guys are using your cloud subscriptions. And then the final pillar here for the group is the EchoStore Virtual Assistant, which is something that we're focusing on today. So as you know, we're going to be looking at the Cloud Management as a Service solution that we have in place for our customers. I would be remiss to not mention that we also have a Backup as a Service solution, as well as multi-factor authentication as a service. So if you are interested in either of those solutions, please reach out in the questions, comments, or reach out to your sales rep. We will likely be doing other webinars that focus on those two managed services going forward. But as I say, we're gonna focus today on the Cloud Management as a Service. So without further ado, I will jump into the Cloud Management as a Service at EchoStore. We've spent, I would say, since the inception of this business unit, most of the time at the beginning of that, talking with our customers. So we're really focused on the voice of our customers and understanding what their needs and their requirements are. And what we've seen from a cloud perspective, and certainly within AWS specifically, which is what we'll focus on a bit today, we see these four pillars. Customers are not getting great visibility into their billing, so they can't see kind of where they're spending the money. Could they be optimized in the money they're already spending? Should we be looking at reserved instance purchasing, which provides much deeper discounts? Where is my cost being allocated? So, if you have an application or a group and you want to separate out those costs to do showback or chargeback, that's not easy to do if you're just looking at a standard bill from AWS, for example. We also do simplify cost reporting as well as the invoicing and billing process. So that's an area that our customers have given us feedback on as to understanding their bill and looking at, maybe a 13-page bill with a bunch of different services on it that they're not sure about. So that's the first pillar. For security and compliance, we're all in a world where security is extremely important, as well as, meeting regulatory requirements is also a very, very important part of our customers' businesses. So being able to have visibility into things like configuration changes, security best practices, tracking permissions, cloud perimeter assessments. We're going to show some of that as part of the demo, but that was also, right up there with, how much am I spending and where am I spending it. The third pillar here is asset management. Now, historically in data centers, there's, a lot of tools out there that help with asset management. CMDBs are a great solution for looking at what your hardware asset management, software asset management looks like. In the cloud, those assets are much more fungible. They tend to, appear and disappear on a regular basis. Knowing where those assets are, what type of assets they are. So in AWS, EC2 instances, maybe RDS databases. Are we utilizing the correct size, t-shirt size for those specific instances? And, are we using best practices to keep our environment, in top shape, essentially? So that asset management is a core piece to that too, and it feeds into that security and compliance as well as cost and expenses pillars. And then finally, on the user experience side, that's where we have built our service. So we try to provide excellence in user experience for the service. We can help, obviously, with dashboarding, reporting, budgeting, and real-time expenses. So being able to provide you with access to your data and provide it in such a way that helps you run your business is really, really a core component of what we've built within our service. So that kind of gives you a very high-level, broad stroke of what the service can provide. And we'll get into some of those features as we move forward with the demo. So I'm going to move on now to kind of some of the built-in features to the service. So as some of you are aware, there are a lot of different ways in which you can purchase your subscriptions, especially around instance purchasing. So many of our customers have instances, EC2 instances, for example, or potentially RDS instances, which are backed with compute types on the back end. And, AWS will come to you and say, here's your on-demand pricing. So as you fluctuate, as you grow and contract your environment, you'll get that on-demand spend, and you won't ever pay more than you need to. The problem with that is the on-demand spend is extremely expensive in comparison to, paying up front. So when you pay up front with a reserved instance, you're essentially committing to AWS that you will use this instance over a certain amount of time to a certain size. What we've seen in the first wave of our customer journeys to the cloud, customers will get to the cloud, they will see the on-demand pricing, and they'll say, okay, we should definitely try and optimize this, and we'll buy a bunch of reserved instances. The problem is managing those reserved instances is extremely difficult. You find that you purchase these reserved instances, maybe the EC2 instance or RDS database, for example, is decommissioned, and then you're left with this reserved instance that's costing you money that you may not be applying to some other EC2 instance in your environment. And if you don't go through all of your reserved instances and figure out, what's applied to which compute resource, you're going to be paying for something that you're not using. So our service does a great job at automating that back-end financial operations process. So you can see here, we can actually take your reserved instances, purchase them on your behalf, and then when you're not using that instance, we can sell it back to AWS on your behalf so that you're never left holding these reserved instances for long periods of time and not using them. So you're always optimized and always getting the best price for your compute, but you don't run the risk of potentially having those reserved instances hanging around and not being used. So that's kind of what this slide illustrates. And we've coined this as a continuous optimization of your environment from a financial operations perspective. So we're all kind of aware of the continuous integration and deployment pipelines when we start talking about development and release of whether it's applications or code or infrastructure into the cloud. What we're adding here is once you get to that operate phase of your deployments, continuously keeping track of how you're scaling that environment, how do you optimize that environment from a utilization and cost perspective, and continuously analyze it to make sure that it fits in to what you were expecting, as well as what you're hoping to spend as part of that deployment. So this is a continuation of that CI/CD pipeline as it pertains to operating your environment going forward. So now I think we're going to move on to kind of more of the EchoStore service here. I have a couple of slides about the service and sort of how it looks. As I said, we're a very high-touch organization. We're based here in the Northeast. We have a number of architects and engineers on staff who are certified in AWS, Azure, as well as the Microsoft 365 platforms. And part of our service is to really work with you, the customer, to better understand your environment, and we can provide quarterly health checks around kind of where your cost could be optimized, what some of the feature enhancements are, and sort of where the products that you're using are going forward, because it's very difficult to keep track of what services have been released in AWS, how you should potentially use them going forward, and then more importantly, when you do change your underlying infrastructure from, say, an infrastructure as a service platform into more of a platform as a service, like a Kubernetes container or something like that, what does that look like from a cost perspective, and how can you continually optimize that? So, the EchoStore support team is really here to help you through that journey and continuously work with you as a customer. It's not a kind of a set it one time and then, just let it run in the background. We're really eyes-on, hands-on with you and your environment, as much as you want or do not want us to be. A typical cloud management onboarding process here, just to kind of talk through how we work with our customers. We obviously have a planning and deployment session, initial kickoff, to see kind of where you guys are from a cloud perspective. If you're in the cloud and you're looking to do some of this cloud management, we'll do a couple of weeks of discovery, do the data collection, and then come back to you with an analysis to look through maybe some of the areas that could be optimized. Maybe there are security concerns or maybe just areas of improvement, generally speaking. And once that's done, we can provide a final report of potential savings and kind of areas that you could improve upon. And then going forward, we will continuously do that on a quarterly basis with you. So that's kind of the essence of the onboarding process there. So I'm just going to pause here because we're going to jump into the demo. I don't know if there were any questions that came in. Guys, if you could help me with that.
Absolutely. Daniel, there's one that did come in that said you used the term account management a couple of times. What exactly does that component of the service provide to a customer?
Yeah, absolutely. So as some of you may or may not be aware, from an AWS perspective, you essentially will sign up to AWS and have accounts available to you. You can build those accounts, provision them, deprovision them manually through the UI. We have a fully automated process for our cloud management as a service where we can deploy accounts and destroy accounts for you on your behalf. But one of the core features of kind of the account management piece of our cloud management as a service is really how do we put the guardrails in place when we deploy accounts for you to make sure that they meet your requirements, whether it's security, whether it's automation, Do you want certain teams to be able to deploy into specific accounts? So it's all about that governance and control, and we work with you to kind of make sure that that's in place as you move forward with your cloud journey. So that's a huge part of account management for us.
And Daniel, I believe you touched about this, but we had two people kind of come in with a very similar question, which is, since you are able to kind of manage the accounts, are you also able to do anything with the resources that are within those accounts? It sounds like we're going to touch upon that with the demo, but just want to make sure I called that out as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we touch on the automation section of this, we can talk about how we can help you from an automation perspective start to look at some of those areas of cost savings and best practices to, clean up some of the environment, because it's very easy to put resources out there, but then the lifecycle management of that is definitely a much more complex conversation. So we'll touch on that towards the end of the demo. Okay, so we hopefully are looking at the dashboard for our demo account. So I will preface this by saying this is a set of demo accounts. So you will see things in here, maybe security things that you would never want to see in your own account, but it's really just to call out some of the features and functionality that our platform provides. So we're in the main dashboard here. This is a default dashboard that we create for all of our customers. This allows you to see your costs on a monthly basis, ongoing. This was updated this morning. So you can see based on each service that you're consuming within your AWS accounts. This is across all of your accounts. What's costing you and sort of where you're spending your money. You can also see an aggregate of what you're spending. As you can see here on July 31st, we were spending $38, but suddenly we've jumped up here to 60, so we've doubled our costs. We seem to be, progressively incurring costs as August goes on. So there must be a workload that's running in the back end. As we scroll down here, you can see the cost by service. So clearly we're using a lot of EC2 instances in our environment, as well as we do have some AWS Lambda costs here, and the same on the database side. So, what are we using for relational databases, as well as, some of the Amazon DynamoDB stuff that we have out there. And these can all be customized and changed. You can of course, or we can of course add some of these panes and dashboards and really make this a customized experience for you as the customer. I'm going to jump into the best practices now. This is a great tool for our customers. We can run this best practices tool runs constantly in the environment. And what it does is it uses 4 main pillars to kind of describe your environment back to you and alert you on potential issues that you have in your environment. You can see in our dev environment we have a lot, but just to kind of highlight some of these from a security perspective, you may not be using IAM policies on specific areas of your environment. You can kind of see where those policies are disabled. You might be using embedded credentials with some of your EC2 instances. That's not a best practice, generally speaking. So all of these types of security best practices can be remediated. We can, of course, provide reporting of this back to you. And, you can say to us, okay, we'll go and take care of it. You also have the functionality here to snap between dates, so we can see how you're improving over time. We can, of course, help you to essentially remediate some of those security concerns and work with you to put a plan in place to potentially go through that with some professional services on top of what we're giving you already. The cost piece here, you'll see when I get into the cost savings, all of the cost savings are generated based on the best practices. So you can see here there's a EC2 instance that's using on-demand instances instead of using reserve pricing. So I'll touch on that in more detail. but you can see from this report pretty easily how many of those are being used, and you know what some of those look like. I'm just going to actually flip over to our multi-account view here, because it does have a better view of what's going on across all of our accounts. And you can see some of the numbers here have changed because we've moved from an individual account view into a multi-account view. So, you know, cost perspective here, do we have idle instances, whether it's EC2, whether it's RDS, you know, and some other bits and pieces here, possible savings by moving certain S3 buckets into Glacier. You know, we can see here that, you know, this particular bucket is not using much in the S3 storage side of things. So should we move that to Glacier as an example is always a good one, but we'll touch on that a bit more. I know I'm going quickly because there's a lot of features here that we should cover. Again, availability issues, this is things like, okay, am I snapshotting my databases? Am I taking backups from my databases? I have two databases here. Neither of them have backups associated with them, so if something happened, you know, those databases would not be able to be recovered. Same with snapshots, you know, same with availability zone distribution. So, you know, all of my EC2 instances live in the same zone. That could be, you know, something that could cause you a problem if that, you know, US East 1C availability zone went down. You might have an issue there. So they're kind of the sort of availability side of things that we monitor and can give you reports on. Usage issues. So, you know, are we using the things that we've deployed? You know, are we using the RDS instances? You know, are we underutilizing again? Do we have potential keys that are not in use in our environment? This is kind of somewhat of a security concern. You know, you have these fingerprint keys out there for SSH. Is anyone using them? If they're not, then we should probably clear them up, because that's, you know, part of making sure your environment is really up to that tip-top capabilities and organization. So I'm just going to jump into cost savings here. This will be very similar to the best practices you saw around cost savings, but it gives you a deeper dive into those cost savings. So we can see here that we have, you know, two EC2 instances that are very low utilization and could potentially be changed for potential savings. The same with our idle RDS instances. So this type of cost saving is more about inventory. So what am I using? How much am I utilizing? And how much can I save if I clean them up? And you can group these, of course, by account instead of by best practice. So if you have a specific account that you want to drill into, you can see those same resources, but grouped by the account. So that is more of the inventory side of things. Now we're going to get into cost savings more on the reserved instance purchase side of things. So this is what I was talking about before in the presentation. We can see here, you know, potential savings of you know, nearly, well, it's $110 here. And the way that we calculate that is we look at what are you paying for this T2 small Linux instance, and what is the current monthly cost that you're paying for on-demand costs versus what would you save on a monthly basis if you went to a reserved instance. So if we purchased a 1-year partial upfront reserved instance for you at a cost of $60, which is not something that you would have to provide in terms of paying upfront. It's something that we do on the back end. We can then save you $11 for this one machine. And then if you total up the machines here, you end up kind of with that full amount. This also is the same for reserved instances, and we can kind of talk through you know, how that works, but essentially it's the same as an EC2 instance, but it's based on the database instance class. So again, you're seeing some pretty significant savings, even in this tiny environment, which has very, very few machines. associated with it. So that's something that we really see our customers looking for.
Dan, we have two questions that have come in.
Yep.
Just to kind of keep going. So one of them was, with the EchoStore console or dashboard, can that show multi-cloud, or is just best practices per provider?
Right now, it's best practices per provider. So from a best practices perspective, the account we're selected in here is AWS. If we moved over to an Azure account, which we have set up here, you would get a different view of the environment. Oh, we have an update. That's good. So it's essentially per hyperscaler, if you will. We can work on custom reporting that would work for both, but that would be something that we would work out with each customer.
Awesome. And then the second one was around savings. So if you are looking at your savings and cost savings, and you procured something like a compute savings plan, does the optimization service take that into account?
Okay. Yes, absolutely. So if you have already committed to a savings plan to reduce your cost, all of the reserved instance purchasing is above and beyond the savings plan that you have in place. So the savings plan applies to your environment as a whole, and we would essentially take that into account when we are looking at whether we're going to purchase reserved instances on your behalf. So if you've already covered some of your spend with a savings plan, we can also, of course, additionally purchase reserved instances, but make sure that you've expended all of your savings plan before we go in and start doing that. We can also recommend savings plans. So, you know, if you wanted a compute savings plan for a number of years, we can make a recommendation for that, and we can show down at the bottom here kind of what the commitment would be and what the estimated monthly spend would be, and how much the savings would save you. And if you are really heavy into your savings plans, we can do analytics based on just your savings plans. But obviously for us, all of our spend is uncovered here, simply because we don't implement savings plans for our demo environment. Alrighty, we're just going to change gears here a little bit. We're at 35 minutes past the hour, so I want to make sure we leave some time. So we're going to take a look at this dashboard again. One of the things we've heard from our customers over and over again is we have our environment, and you know, people are building resources and applications in that environment, and it's very difficult for us to show back what those different applications or business units are spending, because we just get this huge bill from AWS. What we can do is help you with number one, a tagging policy. Number two, if we tag your environment correctly, we're able to generate dashboards and reporting that is specific to applications themselves. So in this case, one of my colleagues who's on the line created an application called Steelcase. We have tagged that application correctly, and what we're showing here is a dashboard built around those tags. So we can see the monthly cost of this application based on its tag for which service it's consuming. So this particular application is consuming EC2 instances, and we can see there's, you know, a minimal spend here for those instances. But what's interesting is we can also show that across accounts. So these are two separate accounts. You know, some customers keep all of their applications in one account. Some of them bridge them across many. If they have service-specific accounts, they might have an EC2 instance account versus an RDS one. There's many ways you can slice and dice this, but this is showing the spend across accounts, which is a huge benefit for our customers, because, you know, digging into where the money is being spent for a specific application is really difficult to do without good reporting. And then finally here, we can also slice and dice based on, you know, what type of instance is it? This is a T2 small. How many of them do we have, and how much are they costing? And at all times, you can always see, updated information. So this is as of the 12th. If we click the update here, you can see we jumped to the 17th, and this is now new information. It's jumped up to $8. So this is always updating, and it's something that continuously updates in the back end for you. This is great. Dashboards are great, obviously, but we understand that reporting is really important to our customers. So, from an AWS perspective, we can show all of your billing, what services you're spending. You can drill into each of these. You can look at last month, month to date. We're in August. It's the 17th of August right now. We can look at what our forecast would be for the end of the month based on our current spend. You can include any upfront RI costs that might be incurred. You can look at list price, which is what you guys would always be looking at. And you can kind of see here each of the services that are in place. But if we talk about custom dashboarding, let me just go in here, change to our multi-account view, and we look at our costs here. Under custom dashboarding, we can actually show you a report of any applications or groupings that you might have based on tags, which is, again, the dashboard was showing that before, but now we can select this specific application report. We can group by account, we can group by service, you can add different groupings, you can aggregate by day, by hour, you can look at all of the different chart types, as well as filtering by account. You can filter by region, you can have reserved instances turned on and off. There's a bunch of things we can do with these reports. Once we create this advanced group report, we can send that out to customers. We can email, obviously. You can come in and download the report yourself. You can kind of look at where things are, like in the dashboard, but you get more of a report-style breakdown of each account and where all the resources are. So that's kind of a great reporting feature, especially if you're providing your business units, individual reports and access to dashboards and things like that. It's a great way to slice and dice, and we can permission the environment to give them access to their own reports as well as have them sent out.
Daniel, a question came in here around kind of that tagging and reporting. So with having a lot of different departments with utilizing different resources, is there a way to leverage AWS tagging and create custom reports to know how to charge back those different departments?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is one of those type of reports. This is specific, obviously, to an application Steelcase in this part, in this case. But as you go through, the tags that you create in your environment are all pulled in to the product here, and the service is then able to essentially create reporting based on those tags. So if you had environment reports or business unit tags, you could then report based on those. So that's absolutely something we work on our customers with. If you remember from the presentation we showed, we're able to, with our professional services unit, work with customers, come up with a tagging policy, and then flow that all the way through into the cloud management as a service portfolio of products in order to give you that kind of centralized view. Alrighty. So we're just going to jump into inventory. It's a great tool here to really get a full view of your environment. This is obviously we've hidden all of the unused services in our environment, but you can see here all of your instances, all of your S3 buckets, everything that you might want to see in one screen. We can see tagged resources. We can see, map overlays of where all of your different environments are, whether you're, East US 1, whether you're in California. You can kind of scroll down and see each of these. You can get very granular reporting of different service types. So this is a list of, all of the different EC2 instances we have in the environment. what their types are, where they are, what VPCs they're in. So a lot of really good inventory information that if you were in the UI, in the AWS portal, there would be a lot of clicking around and trying to get at different things, which, you know, is fine, but once you start managing larger environments, it becomes a lot more complex, especially because, you know, logging into each account is you know, a full process, whether you have SSO enabled or not. So all of these services are supported, so I'm not going to click through all of these because we're running short on time, and I do want to get to the security side of the house. So on the security side of things, we have some great features and functionality we can help you with. You know, change monitoring is always a huge question we get. You know, we had an incident where, you know, one of our instances went down, and we don't know what changed in the environment. So with the tool, we can help you from a change management perspective, look at, okay, well, what changed on the 1st of August to the 2nd of August, and we can kind of filter this report and kind of show, okay, these were the changes made on each of these days, so the 1st and the 2nd. Okay, oh, look, something happened here. We had a VPC network ACL association was deleted. We can kind of dig into that specific kind of account name as well as the subnet itself. So you can see what was added and removed. And this is a really powerful tool to help customers understand what's changing in their environment on a regular basis. Some of these things obviously are normal operations that happen as part of your growth, but it's really useful to see, okay, well, this particular network interface was added or removed, and that's why we're seeing this new service kind of come online or suddenly not be available. So change management, really important. I mentioned perimeter assessment earlier. So as you can see, you know, this is every single environment that exists, you know, across every account and every single region. We can filter out, you know, all of the regions that potentially don't have any publicly accessible VPCs. So if we dive into one of these really quickly, you can see that this particular account has a publicly accessible VPC, and within that VPC, there is a specific network ACL rule that's allowing that traffic in and out from the internet. The good news for us is we don't have any subnets in here that actually have publicly accessible resources, but if you did, you would see those. You can see which rule is allowing it. You can see kind of the from and the to, and it just gives you a good idea about the perimeter of each of your accounts and what might be accessible from a external perspective, of course. And obviously, we can look through all of these different areas, but again, time permitting, I did want to show one last major feature before we jump to questions. Actually, two major features, I should say. So, Jim, I don't know if there's any questions coming in here.
There was one around kind of the perimeter, so kind of making that connection to the quote-unquote guardrails. That always being a concern. Is there a way to put those in place through the cloud management service, or is that from a professional services engagement with EchoStore?
Yeah, so there's a couple of ways that we can help there. Obviously, the cloud management as a service itself will report on all of those perimeter, you know, gaps if you have any. When we provision accounts as part of the cloud account provisioning process, we can work with you to say, okay, we want to provision this development account. It's a development account, so we want it to follow these specific guardrails, which will never allow publicly accessible, you know, VPC access. But also, you know, when we do bring customers into the cloud management as a service platform, we do reviews when we first bring customers in, and we can provide that reporting back. If the customer would like us to help with actually remediating some of those, that would be part of kind of a services brief that we could put together. And speaking of which, we have some great compliance tools here. We're going to focus specifically on well-architected framework today. But this compliance benchmark, when it loads, because obviously the demo gods are not being kind to me today because we are obviously doing a live demo. Let me just switch screens here, get this loaded up. But we have compliance benchmarks that work with all of the different compliance frameworks that you guys might have in your environment, whether that's HIPAA, whether that's SOC controls, whether that's NIST controls. So we can benchmark your environment against some of these compliance controls. If I pick the NIST compliance control here and open it up, we can see whether each of these different controls are set correctly in your environment. So if you were to meet the AC6 control, you would need least privilege set up, and you would need IAM users or groups to not have full admin privileges, which is what we have today. So just be aware if you are struggling with some of these benchmarks, we have some pre-built capabilities around assessing your environment against all of these. As you can see, there's a lot down here, and they continuously get updated. So that's a great area to focus on. And then finally, well-architected framework. Is FedRAMP on the compliance list? I believe it is, Nathan. I just saw your question come in there. We'll get back to you with that one, but just because I want to finish the well-architected framework, but I'm fairly confident that FedRAMP is on there. So I apologize for this slight delay. Let's get into this. So we have a fictitious company called ABC Corp, and it has an application. And the well-architected framework is an AWS best practices guide to help customers as they build out their AWS environment. And we have these 5 pillars in place. And what we essentially do is we ask questions against your environment to understand, do you meet some of the pillars that are in place? So operational excellence, security, reliability, performance, and cost. And some of these you'll recognize as being similar to the best practices that we showed at the beginning. But, you know, for an example here, you know, how do we design the environment so that you understand your workload states? So the questions might be, okay, have you enabled logging across all of your S3 buckets? If you haven't done that, it's very difficult for you to understand what state they're in. You know, if you have many regions that do not have AWS config enabled, we can kind of look at that and see which regions do not have that enabled, and we can go in and make sure that that's enabled, and then this particular compliance check would be met. And you know, our goal is to work with our customers to get them up to 100% for as many of these as we can. There will be some instances where, frankly, there might be a security classification that, you know, we don't meet simply because it doesn't match your business requirements. But generally speaking, we see most of these, you know, in place with most of our customers. You know, the IAM policies is a great one. You know, we saw this EC2 instance embedded credentials earlier. This is one that we would have to fix in order to meet this one, this particular security requirement. So with that, I'm going to stop. We do have an automation environment. I think there may have been a question on that, which I want to cover. Jim, was there a question there?
Yeah, I missed that one for you before. So it's a follow-up to kind of the account management question that you answered earlier around what kind of service we provide there. But I think you kind of dove into a little bit around if you were managing accounts, how would you manage those resources in there? So I think you kind of answered that one already, though.
Okay.
But Nate, I have a question around FedRAMP, but we can kind of get back to that one as well from the list of compliances.
Absolutely. Just on the automation side of things, very briefly, you know, as we work with customers, we can automate some of these particular, you know, activities, you know, cleaning up security groups, cleaning up snapshots, cleaning up volumes, you know, when you delete a machine, maybe the volume didn't get deleted, terminating idle instances, start, stop, you know, copying tags. If you have a whole bunch of volumes that aren't tagged properly, we can help with that. Same with S3 here, we can revoke permissions on an automated basis. So this automation catalog continues to grow over time. So really just that's the main sort of set that we have today. We can obviously have workflows and you know, send customers emails as well as set up self-healing actions. So just to kind of touch on that briefly. But with that, I think I'll stop there because we've got about 8 minutes left, and I want to make sure that we cover anything that was not covered.
The only final question I see in the queue here is, if we were to be a customer, would we have access to this portal, or is this something that we'd have to work with EchoStore on?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are multiple kind of customer levels that we have. Many of our customers prefer to just receive reporting and, you know, receive their invoicing in a more simplified way. Some customers actually want dashboards, so they want to be able to click through some of the dashboards and the reporting, as well as the inventory and those types of things. So it's a customer by customer basis, but absolutely we give access to the Cloud Management as a Service product, and we can set up permissions and help you guys get your custom dashboards set up as well as your reporting.
Great. And that was the last one that was in the queue over here from our side.